Art History Untold's version 2.0, the Revolutions update, is much more of a transformational change than a typical game update. Every single one of the 40-ish civilizations now commands its own historically unique unit, and every leader has been redesigned, more personalized than before. Plus AI, performance, UI, quality of life improvements, you name it, this game update is one not to miss. Thank you Stardock for sponsoring this video and granting me crucially an early look at Art 2.0. I'll chuck a link down below if you want to check out the game, as well as some time cards should you wish to skip between the rather meaty sections of this video. Jumping in on turn 1, the very first thing I noticed in my first game was how crisp it looks. Update 2.0 removed that fuzziness from basically every aspect of the game, and it's especially noticeable with things like text, the reworked tooltips, and icons. YouTube's video compression techniques, granted, don't necessarily do it justice here, so let's move on to something you can more easily and readily see. Let's take a quick look at some of the new units and leaders, before diving into the great new culture and influence system. Leaders in Art History Untold have always had some unique traits and features, but that's mostly really all changed here. Not just to better accommodate the culture and influence mechanics, but also to make each leader more distinct, and maybe even a little more historically accurate or relevant. The number of traits and abilities that have changed varies a lot based on the leader, right? So it changes leader to leader, but every civ benefits from their unique unit. Combine it all together, of course, you have a much more cohesive and truly transformed package. And you should see a few of the unique units roaming around the map, as the AI, which we'll talk about later on because it's changed, it does seem to really enjoy building and using its unique units. Now let's talk about that fascinating culture and influence mechanic combo, added freshly here in 2.0, because frankly they're much more than just a tokenistic representation of diplomatic actions. It's not just a basic currency to enact trade. Instead, they serve really your overall empire expansion, using usually soft power measures. Influence can be spent to purchase extra territories for your cities, gradually becoming more expensive as you go. Influence can also be used to further spec out yourself, your leader, with a really neat, ever-changing roster of traits to choose from. These are really fun. Often quite simple benefits, right? That could improve really any aspect of your empire, from things like force strength, and therefore your combat ability, through to religious benefits, or quality of life simulation buffs. It rewards soft power play, and it helps to bolster up the replayability here too, by the way. As you progress through the game to the Revolutions technology, in the name of the update, right, around the end of Act 2, you'll also unlock a brand new unit called the Agitator. And this unit can cause stability to decline, political instability, uncertainty, unrest, and ultimately revolution, using its unique action to flip a neighboring, adjacent enemy territory into your control. It's an expensive action, again, scaling, and it definitely won't win you any friends. The AI will take an issue with your actions, so make sure you have some extra forces mustered nearby to act as an extra deterrence. Influence generation, by the way, works very similarly to that of science and research output in Art History Untold. It features the new or reworked cultural improvements. The things that you build in your cities and your territories, right? This helps to shape your cultural output of each individual city, and that produces influence. The quality of life stats in each city obviously matter overall. This is where you'll find the newly added culture, the sixth one at the bottom, alongside the rest of the quality of life metrics. And like the others, the more you produce, in this case, the more culture you produce, the greater the reward, the more influence you will get. Having it in the positive, right, up 80 or 100%, will often net you double the yield of whatever it is. Happiness is production. Your research is for your scientific output, and now culture fuels your influence output. You won't be the only one using that new influence, maybe to fuel some agitation in the later game though. So let's move on and talk about the AI. It's another area of, you guessed it, significant improvement in patch 2.0, building further on the changes that they made back in 1.4 a few months ago. In Art of History Untold 2.0, there are many improvements, with two standout ones to the AI. Firstly, it's more adaptive and responsive, hard to measure, but it takes fights generally more often than it used to. It takes fights when it should, and it tends to make much better use of its specific personality, as you can imagine, now that it has unique units and more leader traits to work with. Secondly, and this one I can far more easily attest to, the AI is much better at performing and competing with me beyond the first act. If you didn't play a lot of Ara in the past, let me quickly fill you in. The first kind of third of the game, although it used to feel like much more, Act 1, was really a crucial point. If you survived Act 1, you were doing well, right? So, Act 2 used to be the glory zone, so to speak. Get there, win the game. Basically, the AI seemed to drop off around that point. It wasn't really able to compete as well. Thankfully, Art of History Untold is one of the few strategy games now where I find normal difficulty can genuinely be a proper challenge, and the AI is much better at fighting its way through the rest of the acts now. It seems to be more competitive right the way through. So, approach raising your difficulty here, just as a word to the wise, with caution. As well as the AI better handling its act-focused gameplay, the overall pacing of the acts has changed too, just as I alluded to before. Act 1 feels slightly less of a slog compared to Acts 2 and 3 now, with fewer turns, potentially like 100, maybe a little less. Before I forget, regardless of which act you're in, you'll benefit from improved map generation. To be fair, Ara already had good maps. And these maps have also been a work of improvement over time, right? We saw the Earth map arrive a long time ago. Well, now more map options and settings are available in 2.0. And actually, they're focused on it this time by adding even more map types and a more realistic model for natural resource distribution. They do feel better. Some nice UI improvements were implemented here too, like dotted lines denoting territories. Onto the other eye in the room, the UI. I know, for historical strategy game, UI is a hot topic among many people, and you might just lose some sleep over it. So, while I'm gashbagging about it here, I should mention that tooltips have changed. They've been reoriented, moved somewhat out of the way, maybe slightly too far, actually, in their positioning. And I also noticed territory yields are shown when mousing over land. A few other sort of little appreciated and small changes to make it a little bit more workable. The Ara team has also continued to build on the micromanagement reduction from update 1.4, by the way. This time around, goods crafting has received a sort of an intelligent overhaul, better naturally prioritizing the production of goods and supply by building kind of what you actually need. You can also add crafting accelerators before you have them in stock, before you've made them, allowing for better forward planning and more efficient supply of buildings, so you can generally focus a little bit less on that minor detail and a little more on the grander strategy that's playing out, a direction I'd like to see Art of History Untold lean into even more as it moves forward. Man alive, this is a whomper of a free patch update, no? Truly worthy of that 2.0 label. And while we're on the topic of the gameplay improvements, most of which I've already discussed, the mega noteworthy ones anyway, there's a lot buried in the detail here, but I'd be remiss to not mention the overall, overarching improvements to the game. Performance, specifically, is what I'm talking about here. And I think it is equally worthy of some praise. Not only does the game look crisper and cleaner, but it runs smoother too. It's particularly noticeable when you're panning around the map, flying between different cities. Turns are faster, yet again, as well, by the way. And looking through the notes, I believe that the overall GPU usage of the game seems to have noticeably reduced. In a nutshell, performance has got better yet again. So, let me wrap with my conclusion of the update, but first, some critiques. The Agitator, very fascinating, soft play to take over territories. Its UI seems to be a little buggy, not a big deal, probably ironed out in a future update, but a more permanent UI to really show what's happening with this unit, I think, could be very important because it's quite a deceptive one. Secondly, the improvement upgrade UI for cities overall, I believe, needs to be more accessible. It's too easy to miss upgrading those very important structures. Thirdly, leader animations could be smoother. I notice this now because the rest of the game's performance has improved so much that they kind of haven't. So I think there needs to be a little bit of catch up there. And lastly, on the AI, man, it's good. My only complaint with it this time around is that we could probably tone down the number of deals that are coming through. They weren't suffocating, but they were just a little bit too much. And with that critique at the end here, I think that's a wrap. And to be completely and bluntly honest with you, it's hard to find many significant issues with the changes that have been introduced here in Update 2.0. Influence and culture slot very well into Ara's existing systems, its quality of life simulation, and they unlock new options for ideological subversion, conquest, added into the game, further boosting its replayability, diversity of play, in every way, actually. It's really a great addition. The maps are good, performance is even better yet again, and overall the invasive micromanagement has been slashed. Plus, all the new units, my goodness, the Civ improvements, and the fairly competent and complete UI and AI. Ara History Untold's patch 2.0 is a great game update. And that's it, folks. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next time.